everybody knows that clearly Trump was leading in the 2020 election all the way until about 10 o'clock or midnight, somewhere in that range. And then all of a sudden, in these swing states and big cities like Fulton County, Georgia, and others, they stopped counting. And then they started counting again at like 4 in the morning. And it seemed like that all of the votes at that point were for Biden. And of course, statisticians tell us that's impossible. There's no way that you go, 10% more votes for one candidate than the other through the night. And then all of a sudden, it's 100% for the other candidate. It makes no sense at all. But we didn't know what to do with it because there was very little written about it. There was litigation, and people actually lost their law licenses and things trying to make this right. And then a very interesting statistic came out after the 2024 election, and that is that there were actually more people voted in the 2020 presidential election than in the 2024 election. And it was in the middle of a pandemic where people were afraid to leave their homes. Now, explain that, please. And it was by millions of voters. Well, the only way to explain it is something crazy went on during the 2020 election that had never been done before and has not been done since, at least not on a large scale. We also know that because of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, that an excuse was often used in swing states to ignore the laws and the regulations around voting, to allow all sorts of things to occur that would never be allowed before. And so you add all that together, and it tells us that there is a very, very strong chance that there was massive cheating and that actually President Trump won that election. And I don't know if we'll ever be able to absolutely prove it, but there's more and more evidence that's coming out supporting that. So how do we prevent this from happening again? There's a lot of things we need to do. We need to have absolute voter ID. Always, we need to remove, or I should say cleanse, voter rolls periodically, at least once a year, to avoid people voting more than once. Dead people, somebody posing as a person who's actually dead voting. All of this stuff
Only
we know.
I think the law statutorily provides, John, that only dead Democrats are allowed to vote. They don't allow dead Republicans are being discriminated against.
Well, I like to tell people that my grandmother voted consistently all her life Republican until she died, and ever since she's voted Democrat.
Is
So,
that, John, is that kind of like a perverse beatific vision?
yeah, right. So I don't know. It's some law of nature. We don't really understand it. But ultimately, we need to have hand counted ballots. We need to have completed ballots one way or another that you can actually hold in your hand. And I know that there's strong efforts going on with LaCag and also the Christy Hike and her folks. So we need more of that work. We've learned more about Dominion and how that was the Dominion machines. Voting machines were definitely connected to the internet because oftentimes there was some glitch found and they would go, well, how are you going to fix it? We'll just reprogram it. Somebody in Serbia will fix this. And you go, I thought it wasn't connected to the internet. So these are all mysteries. And, Dominion, I think, has been sold. We know that there was connections with Venezuela, and Venezuela they fixed all of their elections as recently as last year. So there's a lot to this story.
And you say, John, when you say fixed, we need to make sure the listeners understand you don't mean fixed in a good way.
The mafia term.
Right.
Not fixed as in repaired.
We actually need to change the system so that it has absolute integrity, that no one can doubt the outcome. And again, anybody who wants something differently, whether it's ballot harvesting, or whether it's voting without showing an ID, is just another way of saying we want the ability to cheat on voting. That's the only way to interpret it.
Because they can't win legitimately, John. They can't win legitimately.
But if you're pushing unpopular and crazy ideas, you have to win mechanically through the ballots in order to do that. And oftentimes, what happens is a country overthrows its government, and Venezuela is a good example. Cuba is another example. And then you use voting methods to cheat. to maintain that government, a dictatorial government. So there are forces in the U.S. today trying to do that on the front end, trying to cheat their way into a socialist government. And we have a socialist mayor of the largest city in the U.S. now. He's definitely a communist, and it's not going to bid well for New York. But I hope we can learn from these lessons. I worry very much about the future of this country.